What is a success for the Detroit Lions in 2019? Let's talk about it. So obviously last season was kind of a down season. We were expecting a lot more with Matt Patricia coming in. After 2 9-7 seasons, we get rid of Jim Caldwell. Like, that's not enough. We need to be winning playoff games. So we bring in Matt Patricia, who's with the New England Patriots, who had a lot of success. Okay, yes, we're going to maybe win a playoff game this season. We started off with a pick 6 against the Jets and everything was going great until we ended up finishing the season at 6-10. So with that being said, what is a success for the Detroit Lions in 2019? And really, what is a failure? Because I think it's easier to constitute what a failure is, but how big of a failure would the Detroit Lions have to have maybe some guys fired? You have to think about some of the guys that have been here for years on the coaching staff. You have Bob Quinn, who's been here for years, bringing in all of his guys. Now they're all here. If the Detroit Lions had a big failure of a season, what would that mean for his job? Would he still be safe? Or would the Detroit Lions decide to move on? Now, Matt Patricia, this would only be his second year as a head coach. So you would think that even if they had another bad year, Matt Patricia would probably still be here for at least one more season. But if Bob Quinn brings in Matt Patricia to be his guy and Bob Quinn ends up getting fired, then would they keep around Matt Patricia or would they look elsewhere? So let's talk about it. What would be a success? That's how we have to start this off. So like I said, the Detroit Lions were 6-10 last season. And they made it noticeable that 9-7 was not enough, or just making the playoffs was not enough, and that they should be winning playoff games. But then again, they finished 6-10 last season, so really 7-9 would be an improvement. But I don't know about you guys, but I will not be happy with 7-9. I kind of have to see the Lions make the playoffs. I really want to see the Detroit Lions make the playoffs. And in my opinion, I'm going to set the bar a little bit lower than what a lot of people would. I think a lot of people go straight for it, we have to win the division. But when you really think about it, we've only had 4 division titles ever. Like, the Detroit Lions don't win the division very often. So to say the Detroit Lions have to win the division or it's a failure, I think maybe a little too far. But if the Detroit Lions miss the playoffs, now that could be a fair argument to say, okay, this was a failure. Because losing out on Jim Caldwell to bring in Matt Patricia, who's expected to take us over the top, and for back-to-back years not making the playoffs, it would be really hard to say, okay, yeah, this is the right guy for us when Jim Caldwell was able to do it. When you look at Jim Caldwell's first year back in 2014, he came in and the Detroit Lions win 11-5. 2015, they didn't make the playoffs. But then in 2016, they did make the playoffs. In 2017, they were 9-7 once again, but the Detroit Lions said, hey, this is not enough just to make the playoffs. So maybe you think, okay, maybe the Detroit Lions have to win a playoff game, because wouldn't just getting back to the playoffs and losing again kind of be what we had with Jim Caldwell? It's hard to say because he's only a second-year head coach, but if you honestly think about it and be fair to what the Detroit Lions did, moving on from Jim Caldwell because playoffs were not enough, then you kind of have to say the Detroit Lions have to win a playoff game in 2019. But what if the Detroit Lions won the division and lost their first playoff game? What if the Detroit Lions had a home playoff game and lost? What would that mean for Matt Patricia? Now, this one's very hard. I would have to say the Detroit Lions will keep him around because, like I said, we don't win many division titles, but we, again, did lose in the playoffs, and honestly, winning the division means nothing if you can't win in the playoffs. Obviously, the ultimate goal is going to the Super Bowl, and the first way to do that is to get into the playoffs, and you have to win your game. So, really winning the division, for me, isn't as important as it is to win a playoff game. But I think if Matt Patricia can get us to the playoffs here in 2019, he will be safe for at least one more year. Now, just getting in 9-7 and then getting bounced out in the first game may still put him on the hot seat for 2020 because, again, he's not really doing much more than what Jim Caldwell does. Now, what is a failure for the Detroit Lions? And I think it's very simple. You don't make the playoffs. Last year, a lot of people want to say it was a failure, but then again, we actually have all this sympathy like, oh, we were changing the offense, he didn't have his guys, we had injuries, but a lot of teams go through the same thing. So if last season was a failure and we see the same kind of thing, or we just don't make the playoffs, I think that constitutes as a failure, and Patricia will be looking for a different job come 2020. Now, it would be very hard, like I said, to fire a coach after 2 seasons. But if you're firing Bob Quinn, a guy who's been here for years, who's got his guys, who's done the draft his own way, who's got his own coaches, and they can't make the playoffs with Matt Patricia being your guy, then I don't think Matt Patricia can stick around. So that's where I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. It's very hard, but I think it's simple. You make the playoffs, Matt Patricia buys another year. You miss the playoffs, we may be looking for a new head coach for 2020. Now, I believe the Detroit Lions will make the playoffs. I believe they will win at least one playoff game, and they may even win the division. But for me, the priority for Matt Patricia has to be make the playoffs. Obviously, the easiest way to do that is to win the division, but I think as long as we get to the playoffs, he'll be safe. And if he wins at least one playoff game, then we'll probably have a celebration or some kind of parade because it'd be the first time in a long time the Detroit Lions have actually won a playoff game. So I think it's as simple as that. The line that Matt Patricia really has to meet is playoffs. If he can't meet the playoff line, then he may not be here for 2020. That's where I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What is a failure for the Detroit Lions in 2019 and what is a success? What does this mean for Matt Patricia in the future? This is where I want to hear your opinions because there's really no right or wrong answer. It's just whatever anybody thinks. That's where I want to hear your thoughts. Thank you, Prod, for watching, and I'm out.